Hello Year 4, welcome to the second day of Book Week. We are going to continue reading The Green Ship and we're going to have a go at writing some poems based on our adventures throughout the book today. Whilst we're reading, I'd like you to just think about Quentin Blake's illustrations and how the illustrations affect our understanding of the story. Do they help us understand the story? Maybe they tell their own story. What kind of colours does Quentin Blake use in his illustrations? And how do these colours make you feel? Quentin Blake is a really inspiring man with lots of fantastic ideas and really brilliant stories and illustrations. If you are interested in writing stories, as I know lots of you are, and illustrating them, in the description there is a link to his website where you could find out much more about his style. Maybe we could chat later about what medium you think he uses. What does he use to create his illustrations? Now, where were we? Yes, Alice and her brother are now a fully trained crew. I wonder what they're going to get up to now. On our next visit, Mrs. Treadgar produced an old atlas, and every day after that we imagined we were voyaging someplace new. There she is, look, with the atlas. I wonder where they're going to voyage to. A flower urn became an Italian ruin. There's the flower urn. I wonder what they could hear and what they could see when they're looking at that Italian ruin from their green ship. A palm tree, there really was a palm tree, became the far off shore of Egypt. I wonder what Alice can see through her telescope. This is the far off shore of Egypt. One chilly day we pretended we were in the Arctic. Bushes became icebergs and some sheep that had got into the garden by mistake became polar bears. They travelled to the Arctic. There's some sheep, look. Pointing. Look at the difference in the colour of the sky here. I wonder what that tells us about the kind of day that it is. The last few days of our holiday were hot and sunny. They got hotter and hotter. We wore sun hats and played deck quoits and drank lots of lime juice. It seemed as though we were heading southward through tropical seas. See them? They feel like they're in the tropics, drinking lime juice. You can see the green ship here. And then playing quoits. Have any of you ever played quoits? Here we can see some of their different adventures. I wonder where else around the world they went. Maybe they've been swabbing the decks again. This picture's kind of pink, isn't it? Maybe it's a different kind of day. Or a different time of day. Eventually it became so hot that Mrs. Treadgar decided that we must have reached the equator and that we must have the ceremony of crossing the line. The bosun was King Neptune, with a beard made of garden twine and a hay fork for a trident. There he is, look, he's got a shell. Maybe that's his horn and some fish in his net. And his hay fork trident. First timers had to be shaved, which seemed to include Alice as well as me. There was a bucket of soap suds and a sort of wooden butter knife from the kitchen, and we all got very wet. There's Alice having a shave, look. King Neptune, bosun, playing in the water with them. They seem to have gone on lots of adventures. I wonder what ventures we might be able to imagine, Year 4. Let's have a look at this map and see if we can see where Mrs. Treadgar and the bosun and the children imagined they were. Here's the United Kingdom where we are. Look, there's Brighton. There's Italy. Do you remember they saw the ruins in Italy? Maybe they imagined they sailed all the way around. And there's Egypt on the continent of Africa. And they went all the way. They imagined they were in the Arctic. Right up here. And here's the equator line. Do you remember it got really, really hot? On the equator it's very hot. And that's where they met King Neptune, somewhere around here. Maybe it was in the Pacific Ocean. So there are many places in the world that could be explored on the green ship. Okay, Year 4, we are going to have a go at writing some poems. Some census poems. We are going to imagine we're on an adventure with Mrs. Treadgar and Alice and her brother and the bosun on the green ship. And we're going to think about the things that we might see, hear, feel, maybe with our bodies or our hands, or maybe our emotions, and things we might smell. There are many different adventures we might imagine we went on. Maybe you would like to imagine you're in Italy, or Egypt, or the Arctic, or maybe you're in the tropics, or in one of the places that Quentin Blake has not told us where it is. Maybe you're going to imagine that place. Or maybe you're going to imagine you met King Neptune and write a poem about the ceremony of crossing the line and what might have happened there, what you might see, hear, feel and smell. Before we start, let's explore some of these places together a bit. Here are some pictures of Italy where they first voyaged on the green ship. Can you see the ruins here? And some beautiful coastal towns and lots of mountains. And here is a picture of Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. Maybe the green ship passed by there. Some different things that you might see. Some ruins, old houses, mountains, villages, fields, blue waters. You might hear silence, as there's no one at the ruins. Or maybe you could hear the ruins crumbling, or the chatter of the market, or the wind in the trees. You might hear some church bells at one of the villages. You might feel the heat of the day, or the rough old stone if you touch the ruins. Or maybe the mountain or the sea air. Or maybe you're excited to explore. You might smell dust or the baked earth, or trees or plants growing around the mountains. Maybe you could smell foods in the markets. Look at these pictures of Egypt. Do you remember they voyaged and saw the shores of Egypt? You see the blues of the sky and the sea, and the palm trees there. And here's a town where you can see the domed architecture of the houses and the mosques. And maybe you could see a market with all the treasures and the spices. So some things we might see palm trees, blue seas, blue skies, vibrant markets, sandy beaches. We might hear gentle waves or shells moving in the water. Maybe you would hear the wind in the trees or the call to prayer, or maybe even some Arabic. You might feel the sunshine on your skin or the wind in your hair. You might be excited to swim and play on the beach. Maybe you could smell some of the spices coming from the markets or the fish. Maybe the sea salt or coconuts or even sun cream. What about the Arctic? Do you remember they voyaged to the Arctic and they thought the sheep looked like polar bears? There's a polar bear and her cubs, look, and some narwhals, which I think are really incredible creatures. They're like unicorns of the sea. Maybe you might see some polar bears on your adventure, or maybe icebergs crumbling and crashing into the water, or even some walrus or some of the narwhals, or maybe an old fishing boat like this one.
You might hear the ice cracking or the polar bears roaring, or maybe the whales or the narwhals splashing and playing in the water. Maybe you could hear the old fishing boats creaking. Or you might feel the cold air and the cold wind and the thin sunshine on your face. You might feel the boat sway as a huge whale passes it. Maybe you're excited to see the polar bears. You might smell the polar bear's fur or the fish from the boats, or maybe you don't smell anything, just the scentless ice. When you start writing your poems, you can come back to this part of the video and have a look for some ideas to Magpie. So for our poems, you might use one of the adventures from the book. That's what I've done. But maybe you'd like to imagine you went on the green ship to a place you've been or a place you've lived before. Or maybe you could research a place you'd like to explore and think about and learn about all the different things that you might sense there. Your poems could be about fiction or non-fiction places, so real or imagined. For example, if you went to the crossing of the line ceremony, maybe your poem is about King Neptune and what you might see and hear there. Now, your poems could be written in any way you like. They could be one word per sentence, or they could be a whole paragraph per sentence. You could use some poetic techniques like repetition, similes, metaphors, alliteration. Are these coming back to you from last term? Maybe some rhyme, onomatopoeia, and adjectives and adverbs to describe our nouns and verbs to make it a really rich poem. But if you don't want to, you don't have to use any of these. These poems are entirely your own, and they will be fantastic however you write them.
Okay, so find this sheet out from your pack, okay, to help you. And the first thing you need to do is decide where you're going to be voyaging to for your poem. So you can go back to the book, you've got one in your packs, and look at the pictures there to help you. Or maybe somebody in your house could help you research a place, look up some pictures. Or maybe you're going to imagine your own place. So I'm going to model one with you now. My poem, I think, is going to be about Italy and Italian ruins. So I'm going to start by imagining, what can I see? Well, I can see an old ruin and it's slowly crumbling. So I'm just going to write that. So I can see a cracked old ruin slowly crumbling away. What can you see wherever you are on the green ship? What can I hear in Italy when I'm looking at the ruins? Well, I can't really hear anything because it's an abandoned place. There's nobody there. So I've written the silence of a land forgotten long ago. What can you hear wherever you are on your adventure? Now, what do I feel? Well, I can't really feel anything with my hands, but it is really hot. So I'm going to write that I can feel the heat of the Italian summer. The heavy heat of the Italian summer. Maybe you could use some adjectives or some emotive language. Now, what can I smell in Italy? Well, actually, I think I can smell new flowers and new plants growing out of the ruins, like you can see here. Maybe these flowers have a fantastic scent. I'm going to write about that. I can smell the delicious scent of new life, wild flowers growing out of every crevice. So Year 4, remember you can go back to the slides to help you if you need some ideas, or you could magpie ideas from my poem here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to take away this part and we're left with a beautiful poem. Now my vision is that you bring all your poems to Zoom or you email them into us and I can add them all together and we can make one big class poem. And I'm so excited about it and I really hope you guys are too. If you need any help with this, remember we're in the Zooms to answer any questions and help you in any way that you need.
Maybe some of you are really excited about the adventures of the Green Ship. I wonder if you could imagine up your own adventure. Maybe you could write a story about it. Maybe you could create a play or a piece of drama about your own adventure on the Green Ship. Maybe you would make an illustration, maybe that would go alongside your story, or maybe it would just be on its own.
I'm so excited to hear about where your adventures on the Green Ship might take you in your imagination, Year 4. Maybe you would voyage to the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. Or maybe the big house that you pass might become Brighton Pier. Or maybe you would travel up the Amazon River in Brazil to the rainforest. Maybe you've got entirely your own ideas. See if you could write a story or do an illustration or maybe even create a drama or a play. I really look forward to hearing all about them.